You my bitch.
It's Broadway Comedy Club Radio, the only podcast that's also a comedy club, with your clearly above average hosts, Al Martin and Clayton Fletcher.
Hello once again, everybody, and welcome to Broadway Comedy Club Radio. I'm your host, Clayton Fletcher, joined as always by the legendary owner of Broadway Comedy Club itself, joining us from Florida, somewhere in South Florida, my good friend Al Martin. Al, how's it going?
Oh, Clayton, it's great. The days are surely winding down, and I will be back north shortly, as we are going to be opening our clubs.
Yeah, clubs are starting to open here in New York now. In other places around the country, clubs have been open for a while. But,
Yes.
you know, New York being the epicenter, as they've called us from day one of the pandemic, things are kind of a little bit behind schedule in relation to other places in the U.S. But, yeah, we're open at 33% capacity. Audience is being socially distanced. I mean, there's nothing funnier than a comedy show where you are, 7, 8, 10 feet away from your fellow audience members. It's just perfect.
Yeah, we're really going to be so socially distant that the comic will be inside and the audience will be on McDougal Street, so in Greenwich Village. So,
You're kidding, but there's another club in town that's actually doing that so they can increase capacity. It's like half indoor, half outdoor, but
it's going to be a challenge. It's certainly a new world for a while, different. But, the big thing you got to promote, I feel, in a lifetime of doing promoting, is the safety factor, that the comedians will be safe. There'll be temperature checks as people come into the venue. Plexiglass will be strategically located. We're spending thousands on the air filtration, air conditioning systems to have the proper HEPA filters in there, and some other disinfecting we're doing. So it's going to be a process. And, even though we're open at 33% capacity, it really is less than that, because New York has not lifted the curfew for food and beverage businesses. So our late shows are wiped out. We're basically going to be doing, as one of my competitors said to me in a conversation we had yesterday, we were texting each other. He said, 2 p.m. is the new 12 midnight show, which is kind of ridiculous, really,
Yeah, but at least we're taking steps in the right direction. Eventually they start lifting, and they see that it's working, then everything's fine. So anyway, I want to bring on our guest, Al.
Yes.
It sounds like our guest might have a virus of some kind.
Oh, you can hear that? Oh, I didn't know you could hear that. I thought I was muted. Oh.
You are
I'm
definitely
sitting here saying, I'm not sure she's going to be on for week 1.
No, I'm fully vaccinated. I am. I think
okay.
This is just sinus crazy stuff.
All right, great. Well, you might recognize the voice that you're hearing from a very well-known comedian featured on America's Got Talent and other television shows. Also the star of a new movie that's being featured in the Athena Film Festival, and it's called Julia Scotti, Funny That Way. First time on our show, please welcome Julia Scotti. All right.
If I don't stop talking, it'll be a late.
Yeah, are you okay? What's happening?
Yeah, you know what? I think it's this weather. I got a little post-nasal trip, but I'm okay. I got my second shot last Saturday, so I am. I can go anywhere.
Okay.
So, Julia, they say it's like 2 weeks after your shot that it really starts taking effect.
That's what they told me, yeah. Because I wanted to time it like that because I have to go out. I'm doing a show out in Utah in a couple of weeks, and I want to make sure that I was, fully vaccinated.
So when you started in stand-up comedy, this kind of stuff of Zoom shows and being vaccinated on a certain schedule to go on tour, none of this was going on, right?
It's just it's this brave new world. I mean, it's really weird. Now you remember we would, I would have boxes and boxes back of me of VHS tapes, and I'd call the bookers and go, "Did you see my tape yet?" And you'd hear him lift up the desk and pull out the tape that was holding his desk leg up, and until that's how we did it back then. This is really, I don't know if I like it. I
So
do
what,
like
the
it.
new world? You like the
Yeah.
old world better?
I come from a different generation of how to get ahead in comedy. There were major clubs in New York that you had a home club you were able to develop at, and
Right.
it was very much like the star system in the old Hollywood days. You'd have to work your way up the ranks, but you'd learn from the people who had all the more experience.
Right. If you were if you were a 53-year-old guy doing a belly dance on TikTok, you wouldn't necessarily become the headliner at a comedy club like nowadays, right?
I mean, I can remember watching people like Uncle Dirty, for instance. This comes to mind immediately, and watching this man who was already, when I came into the business, was already in his 60s, I think, and just
Yeah,
no
he
one
died,
really know.
I think last year, right?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did. And just watching him and going, my God, this guy, it's the same act every time he goes up, but he makes it look so new all the
He
time.
looks so smooth.
Yep.
Right.
And people like Larry David, who would, just, he had that freedom like I'd never seen before on stage to, just walk off.
Yeah, and back in those days, like you mentioned, you were very affiliated with a particular club.
Yep.
Some people were comic strip comics.
Mm-hmm.
Some people were Catch a Rising Star comics. It sounds like by the couple of people you talked about, you might have been an improv comic.
I was an improv comic. I was.
Yeah.
I had a rocky history. Then again, who didn't with the improv? But I was married at the time and raising a child with and I had to work, so I couldn't do the late nights or the poker games or the softball games. All I wanted to do was get on stage though, and I got to see some amazing people at the dawn of their careers, and work with these people. It was I felt very blessed to have been it, but I worked occasionally.
That was quite a generation.
It really was, but I credit it to the system and giving us the chance to develop. I mean, when I was waiting to go on at the Improv, I'd go over to 8th Avenue with Beefsteak Charlie's and just do the open mic there, and all the Broadway people would come over and do their sets there too. And then you could work Dangerfields, which I can't believe is gone. It's just a different era, and I feel bad for people coming into it now. And thank God for people like you who aren't giving them a chance, and you do have that sort of system in your clubs.
Did you, when you were in those days, did you ever do that room, the old Triple N?
Oh my God, with the dartboard,
Yeah, you'd be standing there doing a stand-up set, and some dart would be whizzing right by you, right?
Yeah, you had to pretend they weren't coming by. I can tell you a quick story about the old Triple N. I'm watching I forget what it was. It was like up in the 51st Street, right, in like off 9th Avenue or somewhere around it. But I'm watching Paul Newman and Somebody Up There Likes Me. Remember that movie, black and white?
I
Played
remember
Rocky
that.
Graziano.
That was the Rocky Graziano story, right?
He comes walking out of this bar, and it's the Triple N. And I was like, oh my God, yeah, it's amazing.
Now, ironically, Broadway Comedy Club is only 1 block away from the old Triple N. For those listeners who are not aware of this, the old Triple N was like a local neighborhood, an old-style Hell's Kitchen pub with darts and pool tables, where the comics used to sit upstairs waiting to go up in some pen, and the show wouldn't start till like midnight, right?
Yeah. You'd go there after everything else.
Yeah, and you go, exactly. You go there at the end of the night and ruin your night because you never really knew if the audience was going to like you or not. It was a very hard learning experience.
There was Good Times, remember, which was the most misappropriately named club ever in the history of clubs because it was anything but a good time there. Yeah.
So Clayton, you might not be aware of it, but Julia and I share a couple of things actually in life. But one of them is I was one of the last officers of an organization that Julia was at the forefront of creating, which a lot of the newer comics don't even realize existed, but the Professional Comedians Association, which really was an organization. Tell us a little bit about how that all got started, Julia.
The PCA came about because there was a comedian named Abby Stein who was a very funny lady. She's no longer with us, and she got very sick. And I'm trying to remember. I think she had spinal meningitis or something, and she almost died. But she had no health insurance. And back then, you think health insurance is expensive. Now, forget it. I mean, you could be turned down. And she was obviously uninsurable at that point. So we decided.
There were no rights back then.
No, he had no rights whatsoever. So the comedians got together. We said, look, we're this large group of professional people. We were just coming up at that point. Why don't we see if we can, on the advice of a lawyer, put this association together, and maybe we can get a group benefit. And now I was like, I think the third president, and I think Jerry Dino was the first one. I think.
Oh, Jerry Dino was Barry Weintraub also early on involved in that?
Barry Weintraub was involved from the beginning too. Nick Cosentino was involved. There were a bunch of really dedicated people. We had Steve Allen on the board of directors. I think Alan King was on the board of directors. I mean, it was a lofty ideal. When by the time I came in, there was a group plan, and that thanks to Nick Cosentino, he found this gentleman named Lee Champagne who was able to insure us. And so because of that, a lot of comics got semi-affordable health insurance where they never would have had it before. When I came in, I could see the business building as a huge industry at that point, because it was the 80s and everything was just exploding. And a lot of comics were going out on the road and getting hosed, and maybe I got out to a club that had burned down the night before, and I drove all like hours and couldn't track the guy down. And so we felt like maybe it was time that we look towards unionizing this in the way that SAG and AFTRA had done. And so, we put it out to the membership. They voted in favor of us exploring it. And I think I forget which Teamsters local we were going to be associated with. But comics are really weird people, aren't they, Al?
Yeah, they're more suited for, they're individualists, and I think part of what, this is not an everyday profession. You don't wake up and say, I want to be a comedian. Usually, and I'm doing a project I'm working on right now, which I'd love to have you on as well, where I talk to comedians and find out what they did before they were comedians. Mm-hmm. So, it's going to be titled Before the Laughs. So, you're right. So, but what leads us to become comics is that we tend to have a little bit of an individualist streak.
Right.
So when you try to unionize and try to get 3,000 independent thinking comics, it can lead to problems,
And we weren't insisting that it wasn't like a strong arm kind of thing. But what I envisioned was that clubs would hire PCA sanctioned comics, so that at least the club would know that they were getting somebody who had paid their dues, had learned their craft, and had worked their way up through the ranks. And we had set minimum guidelines for money, and the clubs were on board were on board with it. They were signatories of the union. It had a future. Was it perfect? No. But what happened was, the comics who were on board were fine, but then you'd have somebody go, well, F that, I'm going to come in and do it for half of that money, and it
Well, that's where that whole survival individualist mode came in for certain people, and it kind of destroyed it for the others.
Well, we were trying to maintain a quality level so that the business wouldn't die, wouldn't burn out. We could see what was happening. The whole market was being saturated, and the demand for product from comics, you were getting, comics that the headline that didn't belong in a headliner position.
Right. And I think part of it was when you began with it, It was during a comedy boom.
Mhm.
And then by the time myself and Kate McGill were on the board of the PCA towards the end, it was the comedy bust. Everything
Yeah.
started going.
I think Kate even followed me. I think, if I'm not mistaken, she was my
She was
vice president.
remarkable. She was
my
great.
vice president. Yeah, she's a sweetheart. I love Katie. She's, we've reconnected thanks to Facebook, since I've been back.
Well, let me
Yeah,
jump in
so
here real
she,
quick because I wanted to give my opinion because they tried to unionize comedy again, maybe I guess 15 years ago, something like that. I was
Yeah,
really
early
new
2000s.
back then, and what happened was the comics all got together and said, "Yeah, we should all make more money." And I was like, "Yeah, this sounds great, guys." But as a member of SAG and AFTRA and several other performing arts unions, let me let you guys know the downside of unionizing is that you will only be able to work in comedy clubs that are union friendly or union approved or unionized themselves. And that's the way it works in theater. If you're a member of Actors Equity Association, you can't perform at a non-union theater,
Right.
or you're a scab, right? So I
Right.
said, so that means there's going to be less work. Once you join the union, the amount of work that you can accept will be cut dramatically. And that was pretty much why the second attempt at unionizing comedians who generally don't have anywhere near as much work as they want already
Right.
didn't want the idea for their opportunities to be cut.
And we understood that. It was true back then too. And so we made a provision, and I don't remember exactly what it was because it was so many years ago, but we did make a provision to allow non-union comics to appear on a show. And I think it was maybe one non-union comic per show on a 3-person show.
Yeah, and that's the same as what they do in the theater companies. But
Yeah.
generally speaking, the problem is not for the non-union comedians, it's for the union comedians. Like once you join, now the number of places you can work is about to be cut maybe by 80% because a lot of the comedy clubs either wouldn't want to get involved with union talent because they didn't want to have to pay higher rates and health insurance and everything else, or they couldn't afford to do it. Or
Well, the
they wouldn't
incentive to
qualify
join,
because the
yeah.
conditions in those clubs wouldn't be good enough for the union to say, yeah, this is an approved union house.
Yeah, we weren't asking for a whole lot, but the incentive for comics to join was, yes, you can work as a non-union act, but you're not going to get paid the same wage that a union act does. And eventually, what's going to happen is the club is going to know if you're getting a PCA sanctioned headliner that it's pretty much a lock that act is going to do because they had to work their way up.
Yeah. So we tried this twice in your career, and over the course of the years that you've been doing comedy, there's been a real attempt to unionize twice. Why do you think that has still not happened?
I think for what Al said, well, comics just cantankerous, antisocial, anti-establishment weirdos. We all are, and I know for me, the idea of succumbing to any kind of perceived authority is just, it's just horrific. I just want to go run around giving everybody the finger and go, screw you. I got this far on my own. I don't need you now. And it's hard to overcome. It's a hard thing to overcome. But, when you're down at the bottom, when you're just starting out, somebody reaching out a hand to help you, and particularly back then, it was a lot harder for us back then. I say that because I was there, and I'm sure people today would say it's harder now. But even the issue with health insurance back then, there were people just floating around with, like Abby was a perfect example. I mean, she could have died. We had to wind up doing benefits for her. So,
yeah, I could tell you that the last time this occurred in the early 2000s. I had gotten wind of a meeting where, a lot of comedians had shown up and they were there and, like what I would call in today's world, the keyboard warriors. Yeah, let's strike. Now, about a week before this strike was supposed to start and a lot of the stuff was going to go down, I started getting messages and emails from comics saying, if the comedians go on strike, I'll have my avails ready to go in.
Yeah,
I'll take the spot.
But I remember when the strikes actually did occur on the West Coast and on the East Coast too. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And it was because we wanted to raise I think we were getting $5 a show on the weekend or something like some crazy
Now,
number.
what is it in LA? It's like $35. Someone told me right now in LA.
During the week. I don't know. I don't know what it is out there, but it's but
they
we
are
wanted.
lower than us, I think, in New York.
Yeah, I mean, I remember I got $5 a week during the week at the Improv, and I think $10 a show or $20 a show on the weekend, and that was after the strike.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens now with this, because clubs are opening at a reduced capacity. Will they continue to pay what they were paying the comics, or are they going to turn around and use that 33% and say, hey, we're making less money? Or in Manhattan, it could be where the comics will owe the venue money, because the pay wasn't that great to begin with. But it's going to be interesting to see how that all plays out. Like,
well, I think in a city club, it's going to be dicey. I mean, I know on the road, I know I'm doing more theaters now, and so it's usually a door deal based against a base number. And once we exceed that, then just
our listeners have no idea what that means. Can you?
Okay,
help
what it means is, let's say I get booked into XYZ theater, right? And the theater says, okay, we'll pay you this amount of money up to getting 200 people into the theater. You guarantee that money. Anything above that, you get a percentage. So it's usually like 50%. So you're hoping for a full house, because so you don't have to walk out with just the base salary. But because of the numbers going down in capacity, that probably will change. As it should, I think. As much as I hate to say it.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting times for sure. So, Julia, you had this great stand-up comedy career going. Things were flourishing. And then,
about before or after?
No, I'm talking all through the 80s into the 90s, and then you took off for a while.
I was getting to the point where I was looking around and I saw I was looking at 40, and all of the people I had come up with had TV shows and specials and whatnot, and I wasn't getting anything. And I kept saying, well, maybe it's me. Maybe I'm just not. Maybe I'm deluding myself and thinking that I have any kind of talent. And I just started to get tired, burnt out, and I wasn't happy with the quality of the places I was playing. And so I wanted to stay home. I was married. I had children, and so I went back to college with the idea of becoming a teacher. And I kind of just stayed out for 10 years. And then
I'm going to say, most people, they change a few words in their act. They change a few little things.
Yeah, go big or go home, Al. You know how it is.
Go little.
If you would have said to me, and there's a section in the movie where you see me looking at myself back then, and I'm doing this anti-trans bit, and I'm just like, shut up, Julia, just stop talking, If you'd have told me back then how this was going to play out, I wouldn't have believed you, ever. I mean, it was not.
I remember seeing you at PCA meetings with a shirt and a tie, and like a middle-aged guy, and then the next thing I know, I hadn't seen you for a while, and people are telling me, you're now Julia Scotti.
Surprise.
Yeah. I heard people told me that there was a rumor going around that I had gone crazy. I literally lost my mind and had done this terrible thing to my body. And
well, that's a very cruel thing to say, because listen, as you well know, I'm living this in my life as well, as my daughter not only came out as gay at the age of 13, but in her 20s came out as transgender. And so learning this and watching it, and even, a lot of times I would walk down the street with my daughter, and people would look at us and say, hey, look at this guy. He's got to be close to 60 and he's walking around with this young girl next to him. I got a lot of weird looks to me, and I had to deal with some of this stuff myself. Or I'd be in a restaurant with my kid and, you know, some person would be staring. And then when my kid wasn't looking, I had to, like, you know, give the other person a dagger, you know, with my eyes, you know, like, keep your eyes to yourself type of thing.
Now she's been, how long has she been? I don't know how long she's been out because I didn't know.
I would say she's been going through this process now for maybe 7-8 years, Clayton, would you say?
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah.
I have to say, I mean, I've seen you with her, and I've seen you talk about her online, and I have nothing but great admiration for the way you support her. It's a beautiful thing to see. It really, truly is a beautiful thing to see. When I did it, it was 20-something years ago.
A lot different.
Whew.
You paved the way for my daughter having an easier time, if you could call that an easier time. So I can only imagine what you went through when you did it.
It was ugly back then, and I lost everybody in my life. I lost, you know, my kids, as you know, for many years, and friends walked away, friends of lifelong friends. It just was people didn't understand it, and I had one cousin who was like a sister to me back then, accused me of doing it for attention. And I was like, well, listen, if that, I can think of a number of ways, you know, that are less drastic than this to get attention. But nobody got it then, you know. And,
yeah, you know, like when I watch what my child has to deal with on a daily basis, I have to worry at night I worry at night every night when she was working. That's why we kind of switched her. She'll be in the new role coming back as a day manager.
Oh, good. Okay.
I used to worry at night. She'd be on a subway. Oh, Dina, stay in the front car with the engineer or the middle car with the conductor, nowhere in between. Because I'd be worried about her getting home at night or something, you know,
And that's an issue that all women go through. I mean, even my age, and there was a lesson I was not prepared for. That, you know, when you really see life from a totally different perspective, and especially at the beginning of this process, because you see all the things that women have been talking about your entire life, but you sort of only gave it lip service, and then you go, oh, I get it now. Yeah, you know, I don't want to walk in this parking lot late at night. I feel blessed to have gone through it and to come through it successfully. You know, I never thought I'd have my career back. In 100 years, I never saw myself doing stand-up again, much less have it turn out the way it actually did. If I'd have known I was going to be this successful.
You got more TV credits transgendered, right?
I would have done it 30 years ago. Yeah. It's and
nobody wakes up in the morning, Julia, and says, I need to be transgendered. You know, this has just hit me like a lightning bolt in my head. When you see the pain and whatever's involved in going through all this is not a choice. This is something people feel they have to do.
I talk about it in my act. I wish I thought it might have been gay. I wish I had just been gay. That would have been so much easier to do. Because if you're gay, you can stay in the closet your whole life. Not an easy way to live, but you can. Nobody has to know. Right. You're trans, you know, everybody has to know. You know, you show up at work one day, you know, in skirt and heels, people are going to notice, you know.
They're going to notice. Al said he noticed you went from the shirt and tie.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I think I hear you saying, Julia, if I'm not mistaken, is that although your career really went to a much higher stratosphere after you became a female, a woman in a woman's body, right? Even though that happened, that's not the advice you would give to an aspiring young comedian.
No.
You should become trans. So it sounds like it's actually not the recommended course of action. Right?
I'll tell you something about this whole experience and why I think when I came back, I was with two criteria. I was determined to be totally honest about who I was up there and to be fearless about it. But those were the only two criteria I decided on. I know that when I came back, I got a lot of attention because I was trans. It's I'm not stupid. I know that. I was never that much of a comedic genius that people would just go, "Ooh, where'd she come from?" And so with AGT, it was a perfect example. They found me online. I wasn't looking for the show. They asked if I wanted to audition. Like they gave me an appointment audition, which I wasn't going to go in the first place. And my manager at the time said, "Don't be a schmuck. They're handing this to you." And so I went to audition. The thing that I had going for me with AGT was that I had the goods. I could perform in front of 2,000 people. I had done television. I knew what that experience was like. And had I just been this young,
a novelty or a
yeah,
curiosity, right?
I
Yeah,
would have went down in flames.
yeah.
And so I that was my ace in the hole, that I knew my craft.
Oh, you
well
actually
enough to
had
go.
chops instead of just a gimmick or
I
something.
think that surprised them too. I think they saw that as a bonus,
Sure. Yeah, for sure. Well,
I knew
you
I
are
wasn't going to
fearless.
win. I knew I wasn't going to win.
Well,
There was no way they were going to let
It's
me
very
win.
hard for a comedian to win that show
Yeah.
because, certain other types of acts can have, lighting effects and,
Right.
dance moves and stuff. And we're just a person with a mic, and it's very difficult.
And that show appeals to Middle America, and Middle America does not really want. I made a lot of people uncomfortable.
they're not quite ready, are they?
No, not at least not then. That was 5 years ago. Even that span, a lot's happened. And I can show you. I mean, you can go on YouTube and look at the clips and the hate speech that's on those comment pages. When it first happened, I was devastated. I mean, I was crying. I thought, Jesus, why do they hate me so much? I'm just trying to make them laugh.
Yeah, I'll give you a little feedback that I got many years ago when my friend Jamie Lee, Jamie, she started getting a little bit of heat, and she was getting some TV stuff going.
She's
and everything.
very funny too.
Oh, she's terrific. And she
Yeah.
told me one day when it was all first starting, she's like, Clayton, whenever things start to break for you and you start getting, credits to put on YouTube and stuff and TV clips, whatever you do not
look
read
at
the
them.
comments. Don't ever read the comments. And to this day, all my stuff that's out there, I have never read the comments. And I think it just helps me sleep better at night because people are vicious behind the keyboard, aren't they?
Oh my God. I was stunned, and I stopped. And now though, it's funny. I think it thickened my hide. It's like when you first start comedy and somebody tells you suck on stage and you're driving home and you go and you're crying. It's like, I don't know.
It hurts.
It thickens your skin. And now I look at them, I go, you know what, dude? I got a Showtime special. I got an album out. I got 3 credits on a national television show. And I got a movie about my life. What have you done?
Right.
Exactly. And before we go, because we are almost out of time, Julia, but I know time really flew this time.
Yeah.
But before we go, I want to hear a little bit more about this movie. It's in the Athena Film Festival. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Sure. About 5 years ago, I was working in Nantucket, and I met this woman named Susan Sandler, who, if the name sounds familiar, she wrote and had an acting part in a movie called Crossing Delancey. And she's also a professor at NYU, and we just sort of hit it off through Jane Condon. She's a friend of Jane Condon's.
Love Jane Condon.
Yeah, she's great. And she was originally going to help me with a one woman show. And as time went on, she approached me. She said, "How would you feel about a documentary about your life?" And as comics, we're always getting paid. "Yeah, I want to make you famous." I'm like, "Yeah, okay, do whatever you want to do." And lo and behold, a short while later, she sends me this agreement in the mail, and their camera crew showed up at my house. And
it happened.
It's happening. So 5 years later, it premiered actually last summer. So that's the short story. Yeah.
Very cool. And that is called Julia Scotti.
Julia Scotti, Funny That Way.
Funny That Way. And can people see it if they don't have access to the Athena Film Festival?
I can't say anything more than if you don't go to Athena, you can buy a single access pass. It's $12.
Oh.
So you just type in athenafilmfestival.com again. But come June,
Okay.
There might be a mass release.
There might be some news about it. Yes.
Fingers crossed. And what about your book, real quick, before we have to go?
My tape, my CD, Julie Scotti, Hello Boys, I'm Back. I did this when North Carolina was banning trans people from using the bathroom of their choice. So that's the meaning of this me going into the men's room kind of thing.
So for those who are not watching on YouTube and just listening as a podcast, Julia is showing the CD cover. It says, Hello Boys, I'm Back. And there's a picture of Julia about to enter the male restroom.
But when you turn it around, here I am in the ladies' room.
Good for you.
I was going to, I know you're running out of time, but when that happened, I was going to go down there and start just using every female bathroom I could find in every pocket of South Carolina, and it would be just to piss them off.
Literally. Yeah, Al, anything else before we say goodbye to Julia?
No, I also another niche besides the ones she's talked about. She also had an appearance on Women of a Certain Age as well, correct?
More funny women of a certain age, part 2. Do I have the time for a quick Carol story?
Yes, of course. Carol Montgomery, the producer, Women of a Certain Age. Go ahead.
Okay, there's 2. There's more funny women of a certain age, and then more funny women of a certain age. I'm on the second one. I was supposed to be on the first one. About 2 weeks before the taping, I wound up getting quadruple bypass surgery, and me being a comic called her up, and I said, I'm in the intensive care unit, but I'm going to be there for the taping because I didn't want to miss this opportunity. And as it turned out, I couldn't do it. But she said to me at the time, she goes, if there's a second show, you're on it. You're like the first person I'm calling. And she's such a beautiful human being. That was exactly what she did.
Great Carol.
That's how that happened. Yeah, Carol Montgomery. Yeah, one of the good ones. Yeah,
we love Carol.
Yeah,
well, this has been an amazing conversation.
Amazing. I loved it.
You taking the time to.
Oh, my pleasure.
Yeah, tell people how they can find you on Twitter, Instagram.
I'm on Facebook, Julia Scotti. You can go to Twitter, Julia Scotti 4, I think is my handle. But you can go to my website, which is juliascotti.com. So
all right, and that's Scotti, Scotti.
TTI, right? Yep.
All right. Well, this has been a lot of fun. Al, any closing thoughts?
Yes. Selfish stuff. We're reopening. BroadwayComedyClub.com for tickets. GreenwichVillageComedyClub.com for tickets. And at the Greenwich Village Comedy Club, returning every Friday at 7:30 p.m., the Clayton Fletcher Show with the band itself.
Oh, thank you for that plug, Al. Yeah.
Did you know there was a Clayton Fletcher orchestra? Are you related to that person?
No, but my father was a band leader, but his name was not Clayton. That's
okay.
I have to check that out.
I think it was Clayton Fletcher Orchestra. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what's your dad's first name again? Clayton?
Ashton Fletcher.
Ashton Fletcher.
No.
Yeah, she's thinking of Clayton. I have to check that out. I don't know about that. But
I know the last name is Fletcher. I could be wrong on the first name, though.
Well, I'll check it, and we'll let you guys know next week. So for Julia Scotti, for my esteemed co-host Al Martin, and for our amazing technical director behind the scenes, Jay Frank, I'm Clayton Fletcher of the Clayton Fletcher Orchestra. Thank you all so much for listening.
Hi, Al Martin here, owner of the Broadway Comedy Club and Greenwich Village Comedy Club in New York City. And I just authored a great book on stand-up comedy and my 30-year journey called Did It on a Dare, How I Built a Comedy Empire in 30 Short Years. So if you want an interesting story on the comedy scene in the 90s and early 2000s up until the present, if you're an aspiring comic and want to learn about some of my golden rules of comedy from a comedy club owner, this is the book for you. It's available on Amazon, and just go to Amazon, click Al Martin, and it'll take you right to my page. It's available on audio and Kindle, as well as paperback. Thank you.